now.
We are live.
All right, thanks, Aman. Hello, everybody. At this point, I can see there are about 110 students here in this room and a lot more joining us live on YouTube. So good evening, everybody. It's such a good feeling to have you all once again over here. Last week was amazing. You guys did such a wonderful job, and I'm sure all those who've qualified are preparing and are putting their best foot forward for the quarters coming soon. Even if you haven't qualified, I can see a lot of our lovely students who've just joined in. The important part is that we are celebrating learning, and this is just another reason for us to come together and celebrate. Today we have with us two amazing people. We have Stuti Agarwal, who is the author of Young Kalam. She's going to be talking about her book, and we also have Neil Jarial, who's going to be talking about the book once again. She's going to be reading it for us. So just a short introduction for both of them. Stuti is a writer, self-proclaimed home chef and fantasy head. When she is not dreaming of magical adventures and one day being called Roald Dahl's prodigy, she is devouring pizza and practicing her Pulitzer acceptance speech. Way to go, Stuti. That's amazing. And we also have Neil with us. She is a professional storyteller and the founder of The Magic of Books, a leading storytelling club for young kids, empowering young children to read, learn, and grow. Ms. Jarial has experience of more than 8 years as a storyteller and is popularly known as Auntie Neil to the young ones. Thank you so much for joining in for this. And I'm sure it's going to be a lovely session as we learn about young Kalam's adventures. So Neil and Stuti, over to you. Thank you once again for joining us. Stuti, you.
Thank you so much, Ashi, for that. Really wonderful. Sorry, I see some hands waving, but before we get to that, thank you everyone for being here. I know this is not the quiz and you're looking forward to the quiz and the results of the quiz, but we're going to have fun. Like Ashi said, it's all about learning and reading, because I think one of the ways that we constantly are learning is reading, and stories make for a lot of fun learning, right? And the book that we're talking about today is this book called Young Kalam, right? This is the second book. The first book, this is called Fly Away, Young Kalam. The first one is called The Adventures of Young Kalam, right? And before I think I'm not going to keep talking any longer and hand over the floor to Neil, because she's going to read a really fun chapter for us, right? And she's an amazing storyteller. So over to you, Neil. For any questions, girls and boys, leave them on the chat or put up your hands, and one of us will, tell you to unmute and you can ask the questions. Okay, cool. Over to you, Neil.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Stuti. Thank you, Ashi. Okay, children, let me see if you all can hear me properly. If you can see me and hear me, touch your head. Okay. If you can see me, touch your forehead, your nose, your cheeks, chin, head, nose, eyes, chin. That's not your chin. You're not listening to me. That's your chin.
Chin.
Okay, now that I've got your attention, I love Stuti. You all know that. Or if you don't, you should know that. And I've read almost all her books. And this is the second book called Fly Away, Kalam. You have to read the first one. It's fun, and you'll finish the book maybe if you're a reader, you can finish it in an hour's time. So I'm going to read you the first chapter of Fly Away, Young Kalam. Look at that. Isn't that a beautiful cover page? Okay. Chapter 1, Science to the Rescue. Kalam, called out Shankar Mama, the town sarpanch. Come see the, what do you call it? The spider web on this boat. No, Kalam, check that spider web on my boat, screamed Murugan uncle of Murugan Military Mess. I cannot have delays in my spice orders. How can you care about some silly spices right now, Murugan? We're preparing for a cyclone here, shouted Father Joseph de Mello. Yes, Murugan, quit being so selfish, agreed Pandit Shiva Prakash. The island of Rameshwaram was in a tizzy this grey morning in June 1942. The town had fought many cyclones over the years, but it had been warned about this particularly nasty one this season and were gearing up for it. The kind that was last seen in 1939. The warning had read. 10-year-old Abdul Kalam remembered the terrible time like it had happened yesterday. After all, it was his quick thinking and clever inventions that had saved so many from the angry cyclone and the town tyrant Punnakai, who had put everyone in danger. And this Punnakai is a very interesting character. You have to read book 1 to know about Punnakai. But what the boy cherished most was the victory of science and the appointment of his new hero, the physicist cum mathematician, Professor Ramachandran, as vice principal at Vivekananda Vidyalaya, an official town scientist. 3 years later, the town was now a big believer of science. There were bits of it everywhere, and young Kalam was always at the center of it. Even today, on the day our story begins, he was busy using his latest learning in marine engineering to protect the boats from the cyclone. It's called a dockline, Mama, and making web or crisscross with it will keep the boat in place, said Kalam. He examined the boat that Shankar Mama had pointed to before jumping onto Murugan Uncle's boat. His dull shorts, loose, worn-out vest, and sandals allowing him a big leap. Look at that. I like what he's wearing. No, we have to double the dock lines, Murugan Uncle. Can't be miserly with this. Single lines can break in the cyclone. And let's add spring lines at the front and back, he continued. Yes, that would be best. A 30 feet spring line should allow a slack of 5 inches to 5 feet of tidal movement. The 10-foot range and raise the lines. We're expecting a higher tide. That should do it. Of course, Murugan Uncle understood nothing of what Kalam said. In fact, hardly anyone in the town could understood Kalam. I wouldn't expect you to either. I can barely ever understand what the boy said, but everyone trusted him blindly. Kalam, too, was used to the puzzled looks he got. So he picked up the dock lines at once, hopped onto the boat, his pointy nose and wispy hair hopping with him as he tied the lines tightly along the length and the breadth of the boat. Whoo-hee! Onlookers gasped softly at the finished results. For an island, boats are an important lifeline. Safeguarding them was half the cyclone battle won. And Murugan Uncle's boat now looked like it could survive the worst. We must do the same for all the boats, Kalam thought out loud. But I have to go now. I shall be back soon, in an hour. Don't worry, Abu. I'll see the work here. You work on your invention. It's an important one, son, said Jainuluddin Marakayyar, Kalam's father and biggest supporter. Kalam's father was an imam and a simple man with a business of ferrying people to and from Madras, of which the island was a part. He was certain his son would do big things, and he made sure to help the boy in every way possible. Thank you, Apu, Kalam said, giving his father a squishy hug before dashing off to Professor Ramachandran's laboratory. tucked away in a corner of Professor Ramachandran's gigantic lab, was Kalam's own workshop. It was only a tiny storeroom, but it opened up to a shed. And it was here that Kalam's latest invention stood. Abu was right. This was by far the most important invention of his life. It was for a place in the national science competition. 30 students from around the country would take part in a special 2-week camp led by a team of country's best scientists and engineers. At the end of it, 2 of them would get a chance to tour and witness the first flight of the Mohawk Fort's fighter aircraft, which was being built for the Royal Indian Air Force.
Sorry, Neil.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that they're all also taking part in a quiz.
Oh.
It's also a national quiz that they're taking part in. So they'll probably relate a lot to.
Wow. That's interesting. Good on you guys. Kalam, so you know what I like what Sudhi writes, the kind of books that she writes is that they not just the storyline, but it just, because it's in a story, there's a lot of information which just seeps in without you guys knowing that you know about it. So it's very interesting. My son, he's 10 and he loves it. He loves reading also these books because I think the stories, the methodology of everything and anything in science, it just seeps in and it's easy to understand. Kavya, we'll take the questions later, or can you hear me, Kavya? You can give me a thumbs up. So we'll take the questions later. Okay, sweetie? Perfect. Okay, coming back to, so Kalam remembered the first time he had seen the Miles Merlin aircraft in the sky and told his father about his dream of flying. Of course, the boy wanted any chance to be as close to an aircraft as possible. He had been working on his invention day and night. A mix of all the sciences, he called it, and revealed nothing more. He even set up a ferocious bark alarm for nosy townspeople. But whatever he was making was growing in size and becoming difficult to keep a secret. This should channel all the water into the tank, Kalam said to himself, sitting down on the step of the ladder to fasten a bamboo pipe on his invention. It must have enough water for 72 hours. I wonder if one tank will do, he thought out loud. Kalam jumped off the ladder and scrawled something in his diary. Yes, perhaps 2 tanks, like this, on opposite angles would be best. Balance is the way too, he mumbled. Finally, after minutes of muttering and scribbling, he got up. That should do it. Time for biology next. Time to call upon Ram. So that was chapter number 1. And if you want to read the chapter number 2, it's called The Doom. And it's very interesting. So you have to read it all by yourself. Thank you. Isn't that a wonderful book?
Thank you so much.
Amazing as always.
Thank you. Did you like the story, children? Show me your smiling faces. Where are your smiles gone? Yeah, I love that. I love that. Good job. Yes, so if you have questions, who's going to take questions? Stuti and Nashi, go ahead.
Yeah. Stuti, I think, do you want me to help you with that, or would you like to?
If that's because I can't see everyone. I know Kavya G has put up her hand.
Yeah. Students, if you want to ask a question, by the way, Neil, that was amazing. I am so hooked on to the next chapter. I really want to read it. So I'm sure the students are too. And we'll quickly move on to the questions now. I can see a few hands are up. Students, if you have any questions, please raise your hands on Zoom and we'll go our device. So Kavya G, you have a question, darling. Please unmute yourself.
What's the book's name?
The book's name is Fly Away Young Kalam.
Flying away.
And you have to read the first one also, Kavya. That's called Young Kalam.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Adventures of Young Kalam and Fly Away Young Kalam.
I put it in the chat box as well for everyone.
I'll buy it. I'm really interested.
Oh.
Cool. You can leave whatever you think about the book with Ashi. She'll tell us. Yeah. Okay. Kavya Bhandari had a question. I think she raised her hand
All
earlier.
the Kavyas are liking the book, huh? I like it.
Ma'am, I want to say that Kalam means Abdul Kalam.
Correct.
What's your question, darling? What's your question?
I don't have question. I want to ask this only.
Yes,
Correct.
that's good.
It is our former president, Abdul Kalam. And what we're talking about is what he was like as a child, right? When he was 8 years old, when he was 11 years old, what are the things he was up to? Was he naughty? Did he like studying at all? Right? Did he go on adventures with his kids? I mean, with his friends, sorry. So that's what the book is about.
I can see Ayansh has a question as well. Ayansh? Okay, I think.
Yes, ma'am, I did not understand.
What is it that you didn't understand, Ayansh?
Ma'am, I did not understand anything.
That's okay, Ayansh. What we sometimes, this happens to me a lot. So what I do is I go back to the chapter and I read it again on my own, and then I understand, right? So maybe you can go back to the book and read the chapter, and if you have any questions after that, you can leave them with Ashi, and either me or Neil will answer them. Okay?
Absolutely. I can see Vansh has a question. Vansh Sheth.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I don't have a question about the book you read, but I have a question about the book written by Anna Sewell, The Black Beauty.
So you have a question about?
The book written by Anna Sewell, The Black Beauty.
Okay. I don't know if I'll be able to answer that.
Yeah.
Do tell us.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, we all know that Anna Sewell has written the book about Black Beauty. She had met with an accident and lost a leg. But in the book which I read, there nothing is mentioned about Anna Sewell. Then how did she came to know about the Black Beauty course?
Black Beauty has different books. They're different books. It's a classic, so there are a lot of authors. They have different versions.
Students, it'll be amazing if you could ask questions regarding the writing or the book itself. What was the process that?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, darling. You've raised your hand, right? I'll give you a chance. All right. We'll just go in an orderly way so that everyone gets a chance. Aradhya, I'll give you a chance, darling.
Okay.
Sorry, to just answer, I think there was a chat question which said, is there a Kindle version? Yes, there is a Kindle version that is available on Amazon.
Awesome. I can see Priyanka K has a question. Priyanka?
Yes. So how can we improve our comprehension?
Reading, Priyanka. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of reading. So you read every single day, not just your textbooks, but pick up a book and try reading at least 5 pages every day. Okay? And anytime you don't understand, like I was telling Ayansh, you read those pages again. Okay?
That's some really interesting advice, students, coming from the author. I'm sure, would help you a long way. So do act up on it about it. And also now we have a summer break coming in. So we have a lot of time on our hands to pick up some really good books like the Young Kalam and get started on to our reading habit. I can see Aradhya also has a question now. Aradhya, you can go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I've now searched on Kindle and it is available on the Kindle, so I can read it.
Okay, I believe that was his question.
And I draw comics and write it in my book, rough notebook.
That's really cool, Aradhya. Keep doing that and keep saving those pages. Give it to mom.
I draw about my favorite cartoon characters or something funny or something.
Keep saving them. When you finish that notebook, keep giving it to someone to save, or keep it yourself and save them.
Thank you. Krishiv Rishabh, you're next. What's your question, darling?
Yes, ma'am. I had a doubt that where can we get this book?
The book is available on Amazon. It's also available on in your nearest bookstore. So wherever you want to buy it.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
We
Kushal.
also have Pinak. Pinak, you can unmute.
Yes.
Go
I
ahead.
have a question. Who has written this storybook?
I have written this storybook, Pinak. Me.
It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pinak.
Ishan Ray.
Yes, ma'am. How did you get the information from Kalam's childhood?
So, I read, I think I was telling Shaish that I read all the books that have been written on Kalam, right? On Abdul Kalam that are written by him, right? And some of it is also imagination. So it's not a work of non-fiction, it's a work of fiction, which means I've also imagined a lot of things in it. Yeah.
Awesome. Kahan Bhuva. You can unmute.
I wanted to ask that which are all the books written by you?
What are the books written by me? There are now too many to hold up, but there are two parts of Kalam. There is this book called Tootlu Toop, which is also recent and written by me. And there are a few short story books that are written by me.
So guys, if you like Harry Potter, you'll love to do. So you have to get that.
I can see some really amazing, sweet comments in the chat box, so I'll just read it. Prisha says that she really loves to meet any author because she's never ever seen anyone live before. So this is very fascinating for her. Also, there's one question from the chat box saying, is the movie on Young Kalam based on your book?
No, it's not. It's a movie. I don't know. It's not. It's not based on the book at all.
And also Priyanka is asking, what kind of books can children read at this age? Do you have any suggestions, anything that they can pick?
So books, you'll be able to see the age group. Always see the age group that's written here, right? All the books will have an age group written at the back, so you can check those. If you are someone who's read a lot and can read harder books, then pick those up and ask your parent or ask your librarian or class teacher, and they'll be able to tell you if those are suitable for you, right? But here is where you'll get all the age appropriate books. Okay.
Awesome. Moving on to the next kid, Tanul. Tanul, you have a question? Tanul from Elpro International. Yes, Tanul.
I don't have any doubts.
Okay, your hand's just raised, I guess.
Ikansh had a question for a really long time.
Yes.
Go on, Ikansh. Ikansh Jen.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I was saying that how was it like when you wrote the book? How did you feel while writing the book?
How did I feel? So whenever I'm writing a book, it's very, very exciting because I love writing and I love books that I write that are full of imagination and wonder. And that's what Kalam is all about. I think I didn't know enough about science, so I did some of the experiments which I've written about in the book, which is a lot of fun. So writing a book is always lots of fun for me, and it's an adventure. Is what it is. Thank you so much for
answering this question.
There's Shaurya who has a question. Shaurya Singhal. Yes, go ahead. Ask your question.
How did you get the idea for writing the book?
How did I get? We were sitting and discussing all the interesting people we've met or we want to meet. And that's when we thought, we would have loved to meet Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam and spoken to him about what he was like as a kid, right? And we were like, why do we I mean, we can't meet him anymore, but we can always imagine what he'd do, right? And that's how the idea came about.
Ahana is one.
Yes, so usually I ask most of my teachers this question, maybe because like I love to read books, but sometimes I don't find non-fiction books that interesting. So if like when you were my age or similar around that age, so could you recommend a few non-fiction books or any books in general that you used to read?
Non-fiction. I was also not a big fan of non-fiction, so that's a little bit of a tough one for me. But what grade are you in, Ahana?
You'll have.
I'm in 7th grade.
Okay, so something like an Anne Frank diary would be something you can pick up, right? There are other books on Gandhi that you could pick up, right? But Anne Frank's diary is one that I think you should start with, primarily because it would suit your age. It's also very good writing. Start with that. If I come up with more names, I'll tell you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Next kid in line is Prerak. Prerak?
Yes, ma'am. So, one thing I wanted to ask you. So, like one kid asked before, Shaurya Singhal, I think so, that upon the question of that, why did you write this book? But mine is a little bit different. Why did you choose only APJ Abdul Kalam? Like, why not anybody else? Because there are so many science entrepreneurs, like so many great science people in India history, like Vikram Sarabhai.
Thank you so much for that question, Prerak. I think, yes, lots and lots of scientists who've done really, really great work. But something I have always felt about APJ Abdul Kalam has been, he seems like a lot of fun, right? And I mean, seeing his speeches, seeing the way he interacted with children, I grew up watching him speak. And I always felt he was so much fun. And I always thought, he'd be a fun person to be friends with as a young person. I'd love to be friends with him. And therefore, I chose to write about him.
Thank you. Saish, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask, ma'am, did you have written any myth or fantasy books?
Yes, I have. There's this book called the Very Glum Life of Tootaloo Toop, which is a complete magical fantasy fiction. That I think if you like fantasy fiction, like Neil said, I'm obsessed with Harry Potter. That's where the inspiration comes from for Tootaloo Toop.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm just going to read a few questions from the chat box at this point. So there's one question asking, when did you start writing? And also if you could talk about your process behind writing this book as well.
Sure. So I started writing, I was writing even as a child, right? But I was writing very short stories or poems. I started writing books when I was, I think, about 7-8 years ago. And the process, I think, is it starts with reading. The more you read, the better you will write. So that's what I tell everyone. Just continue reading as much as you can every day and try writing. I don't do it every day religiously, but you really, really, really should write a little bit every single day. Just write one paragraph, right? If nothing else. Write one word, but it has to be a really fun word, right? It can't just be the.
I have a question for you, Stuti. At this point, I'd like to know, a lot of people, when they start writing, you've written quite a few books at this point. Was there any time where you faced like a writer's block where you just didn't know what to write? And how did you navigate, if you ever felt this?
Yes. Thank you, Ashi. Yes, a lot of times we get lazy, we don't have ideas, right? But again, that's where reading comes in. When you read a lot of fun books, you get new ideas. You also get inspired. So a lot of time when I read a Roald Dahl book, I get inspired, or a Harry Potter, or a lot of other contemporary writers now, right? So anytime you do face a lull, you start reading a lot more, and make sure you start I mean, forcing yourself to write, even if it's a day.
Thank you for that, Stuti. Going back to a few more questions, I can see there are a few more people who'd like to ask you a few questions. Lakshanya?
Yes, ma'am, I wanted to ask that I've already completed 7 books of Harry Potter, the series. So I wanted to ask if there are more such fantasy books that we can read in English and also Hindi, which you could recommend.
Cool. So do you mean fiction like Kalam, which is realistic fiction, or do you mean fantasy fiction like Totally 2?
I mean fantasy fiction.
Fantasy fiction, there's so many, right? I'm reading this one right now, which is called The Time Traveling with a Hamster. Excellent book, right? I'm going to be reading White Bird next, which is not a fantasy fiction, but again, sorry, who had asked? Someone had asked about a realistic non-fiction book, right? White Bird is the answer to that. So many authors that are writing really great books at this point. Read Roald Dahl, Lakshanya, great fantasy fiction there as well. Of course, Harry Potter you've already heard of, right? What else? I'll come back. If I come up with more suggestions, I'll come back. But Ross Belford has written a lot of books at this point. Excellent writer for the 3rd to 5th grade.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, Tanvi Maheshwari this side.
I'll give you a chance. Darling, I'll give you a chance. We'll just go in an order. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult to...
Ma'am, you unmuted me.
All right. Yes, Aman must have done it. Yes, Aman. Tanvi can ask a question.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I want to ask, ma'am, maybe there will be some inspiration. So, ma'am, I want to ask, what was your inspiration for writing the books and all that stuff, ma'am, related to ma'am books, writing and all? Ma'am, you must have got some inspiration or some idea from where, ma'am?
Yeah. So my inspiration have been the authors that I love. Roald Dahl, J.K. Rowling, right? Some illustrators like Quentin Blake, really cool people who have such great imagination that absolutely inspire all my work, because I love fantasy and I love fiction.
And ma'am, one more question. Ma'am, what do you think, ma'am, as a writer, ma'am, what is the most fantastic part for you?
Coming up with the idea, Tanvi, is the most exciting part. Everything else is a long drawn process.
Yes. And ma'am, you are a very great writer. Ma'am, thank you for
Thank you, Tanvi. Thank you so much.
We'll entertain 2 more questions. Due to a paucity of time, we'll just have to cut it short, students. She's answered quite a lot of questions. So let's hear the next question from Anika. Anika Bansal.
Yes, the book, the young Abdul Kalam, who illustrated that book?
There is this really amazing illustrator named Ishan Trivedi, who has illustrated both the Kalam books.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Anika.
And we'll take one more question from Sachi Gupta. Sachi?
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, can you give me the names of some books written by you for a 7th class student?
For a 7th class student, I think you should read the Very Glum Life of Tootaloo Toop, because that'll be fantasy fiction that's a little more high grade. So try that. It's called, I'll leave it on the chat box.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. I have one question for Neil. Neil, I'd like to know your process behind storytelling. What's something that, got you inspired into this world of, stories?
Interesting. Books definitely inspired me. I wasn't much of a reader, very honestly, because of my work. And then my son came along and I knew that reading was the right thing to do. So I started narrating stories to him. I was in human resources and I was a voice and accent trainer as well. And I couldn't really work full time. And I started reading to my son. And it wasn't any surprise, but then when you read to your kids or when you read a lot of books, you are way ahead of, other people, because there's a lot of knowledge and there's a lot of, imagination that goes into it. And when I started that, and my son started narrating stories at the age of 2, is when the school identified that what was I doing different, and that's how I started. And a lot of schools I went to, they were narrating stories just like that, without any expressions and not like a story. So I thought it was very important. The authors do such a good job, and to narrate it and to make sure that it goes out right is when I started narrating stories. And yeah, so the journey's been beautiful, and I love what I do.
That's amazing, because you're doing such a good job. I think you had all of us hooked to this story, and of course, Stuti, you've done a wonderful job writing it.
Yeah.
So it's a great combination, and I'm sure like everyone here has had a good time today. I can see a lot more questions pouring in at this point. Students, apologies, we will not be able to get you all to ask a question. But if you have any questions at any point, you can put it in the chat box, and I will relay it to Stuti.
I've left my email ID. So anyone who needs my email ID can write to me. I prefer handwritten letters, but I'm guessing none of you do that anymore. But we'll go with email.
Thank you so much, Stuti. That makes life easy. So students, if you have any questions at all, you can write your questions to Stuti, and remember to put in your subject line, to write your subject line, as Aman has also instructed all of you. Just a minute. Yes. So thank you once again. I can see. Yes, students. So once again, if you have any questions, you can always write to the email address that Stuti has provided. And Stuti and Neil, this was a lovely session. And genuinely, you had me interested, and everyone over here, I'm sure, looking at the number of questions you had today, I'm sure they're very inclined to read your book, and they will definitely pick it up this summer. So thank you once again for joining us, Stuti and Neil. I look forward to seeing you sometime soon as well.
Sometime in person. Thank you, Ashi. Thank you so much, Neil. You're a star. Such a star. I love Neil. I love the work she does. She's amazing. Yes, kids, the magic of books is her page. She goes live. She also takes private storytelling sessions anytime. Yeah, just love her. But okay, thank you, Neil.
So much, children. Keep reading, keep imagining, and tell stories, hear stories. And don't forget to read a Young Kalam, okay? Both the books and the books of Sufi, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, I also want to give a good huge shout out to Juggernaut. We're doing this in association with Juggernaut. They are knowledge partners. So thank you so much, Divya and team, for facilitating this and for letting us have this amazing interaction. So thank you once again. And all the students who have been such a lovely audience, thank you so much for joining us on Zoom and on YouTube. You guys are rock stars, and I hope you continue learning and celebrating learning as you have all this while, and you continue to do this even in the quiz competition, which is All India Global Jigyasa quiz contest happening now. Started on the 16th, will go on till the 1st of May. So